today's topic is planning for the future. And what we're generally going to talk about is we have a little bit of a conversation about enabling good lives. We're going to talk about the importance of having a long-term vision, about making a bit of a plan to get that happening. We're going to talk through some scenarios of getting the help that you need and kind of some different places that we find people get stuck on that planning. So we can give you a bit of advice on those pieces. And yeah, just I guess a few other places you can go for some support. So many of you will have heard about the Enabling Good Lives principles, but probably not all of you. These are a set of principles that the government has signed up for many, many, many years for how disability supports should be delivered, about the philosophy and the approach that should underpin all work that happens across disability services. They are a set of principles that were co-created nearly 20 years ago, I think, and they are really important. They're really important for you to know in some ways. It's really important that you know that these principles exist. And if you are stuck, if you are looking for a framework that you can use to talk about goals in the future, this can be a really valuable way of doing that. But if you have that all sorted, then don't worry too much about it. So the principles, as you can see on that little picture, self-determination, mother-enhancing, relationship-building, person-centered, they are very much about ensuring that the disabled person is at the centre of the life that we are building, at the centre of any disability supports that they're receiving. And that we are supporting people through those principles like mainstream first, beginning early, ordinary life outcomes, that we are ensuring that we are not just tokenistically supporting people, that support is in place when people really need it, and that support is set up in a way that helps people engage with the wider community, that helps people achieve things that are really meaningful and important to them. So if you want to know more about those Enabling Good Lives principles, the Enabling Good Lives website is actually quite good. It's got some cool little videos that tell stories about what those principles have looked like in practice for other people. And there's lots of tools and philosophy and long documents you can read if that is the stuff that brings you joy. For me, I don't talk too much about those Enabling Good Lives principles, partly because I've never met anybody who goes, no, those principles are bad, forget them. But also because unless they really resonate with you, or particular words resonate with you, they're probably not the language that you're going to use to talk about your life. But if you are trying to win an argument with a government department, if you are trying to convince the NAS that you need more funding, if you are trying to get a support provider to adjust how they work to help you achieve those life outcomes, then they're really powerful words to use, because when you start using those words, they start going, oh no, they know what they're talking about, I best behave. So if you read those words and you go, actually, I could use them when I think about the future, then do. They're great to use. And if you read them and go, they sound a bit too something for me, then don't worry about them. Forget they exist. Continue planning a life that brings you joy and happiness. So that for me is what it's all about, is about planning a life that is going to bring you joy and happiness. So I really encourage every family that I work with on that kind of goal planning stuff to think about a 10-year vision. And it doesn't have to be exactly 10 years. I kind of go with that next, when you know that you are going to be safely established in that next big stage of life. So if we're talking about a 5-year-old kid, we're probably talking about life once you're securely in high school, once we're 16, 18, at that kind of point. But if you're 16, we're probably talking about life when you're 30. And so for me, it's that what I find is that when we talk to people about the goals for the next couple of years, anything that's really hard is really hard to put on paper. Those steps that feel really big are really confrontational when you're committing to doing them. But when you say 10 years from now, you've got so much time to get support, to take tiny little steps towards your goals, and those things feel more achievable. So for me, it's about making sure that you set a timeline that's far enough out that you can make sure that that what you're talking about feels possible, and feels aspirational. I don't want you reining it down into things you know you can achieve. This question of a 10-year vision is, what is the thing that you are hoping? What is that future, the ideal outcome that you're wanting to realistically work towards? And for me, regardless of age, I think that when we're using that disability system and we're trying to get supports and things in place, regardless if you're 5 or if you're 50, it's always a good time to be thinking about what life's going to look like at that next stage and what we can be doing now to make that possible. So when we know those central factors, when we know that actually, I know that in my future, this is what I kind of want things to look like, then every step that we take, every new service that we invite in, every time we're looking for staff, we can have in mind those future factors that we need to be holding true to, and that can help us decide which pathway to take. And setting that long-term time frame stops us from getting bogged down, stops us from losing sight of what actually is possible. So if you think about your vision holistically, some people like to use a model. I personally struggle with models. I don't like too many rules in my goal planning. But people like things like Te Whare Tapawhā or the life balance wheel that just give you a little bit of guidance about what those areas of life could be, to make sure that we are considering them all and building them all into that future. So I tend to go with questions like, what would home look like? You know, what do you imagine that home's going to be like in that point of time? What would great support look like? What will you do with your days and who will you spend time with? Those are the sorts of things that, to me, generate a conversation about that vision. So it doesn't have to be some fancy, carefully worded thing. It can just be, I know that I want my home to feel safe and I want my home to feel warm. I know that when I have staff, I want my staff to focus on these things and help me in these ways. I know that in regards to my health, these things are going to be really important. And I've seen it look like a list of bullet points. I've seen it look like a fancy, very nicely worded thing. I've seen it look like a picture. There isn't a right way that stuff has to happen. But when you know that what is central to your future is that someone has got that eye on your health because you know that that's an area that you can get in big risk from. When you know that you've got friends and connections because that's what gives you energy. When you know that you're going to get out of bed every day to do these things, that's the stuff that we want to hold true no matter where our disability supports take us and no matter what else changes in life. So when we have it kind of framed like that, it's not about I'm going to live at this address with, you know, these 3 people. It's about the feeling, and it's about the central elements of your life that you want to make sure that you don't lose track of. And writing them down really does help, even if it's an interpretive picture. It can just really make sure that we can keep that stuff with us. Put it on the fridge. That's how your family roll. So then comes the working backwards bit. So we've got this nice, in the future, life will include these things. Now we want to do is break it down to what's the stuff that I can do now. And so often when we have that conversation, we're like, oh, well, I know that I should find someone who can help me with this particular piece, or take that step that I've been avoiding, or finish off that thing that I've started. And then there's this kind of murky middle bit where it's like, well, actually, to achieve these things, we know that at some point I need to take those steps. And so writing that all down into the what's the stuff you're going to do now, and turning that into a nice specific plan. So people like those SMART goals that are specific and measurable and they've got time frames. Because if you do that, then you make sure that you know that it's going to get done, and you've got some accountability for yourself and whoever else you get to help you with those goals. And then there's those middle bits that might be really clear because actually you're going to finish school at this point and then you're going to do these next 2 steps or whatever it is. Or it might be that you know sometime between now and then that you're going to do these particular tasks. So have that all written out and have particular ways that you're going to come back to that conversation, so that it doesn't float. Like I say, you put it on your fridge and you come back to it every day, or you say, in my family, where we were working on some specific stuff with my stepdaughter, we had that conversation once a month. And so we had a particular night once a month where we pulled out the bit of paper and we went back to, this is what we are trying to get to. And it's hard to get through these bits, but this is how we're going to do it. And for me, that worked. For my stepdaughter, that worked because it was locked in as a time that we had to come back and be accountable. Because otherwise we all just drift away and do the things that are easy. But you need to find out the way that resonates with your household, because everyone's reactions to goals is really different. Everyone's feelings about having goals and having that written down is really different. But what I know, and there's cool apps to do that stuff if you're not paper and pen inclined. But what I know is that when we don't know what those things are, then it's luck whether or not they happen. And they often fall by the wayside when we hit those roadblocks, whereas that regular accountability ensures that you keep up the momentum. So I guess the other piece is making sure that you know that you might need help. And knowing that it's really, like, particularly in that disability support world, that is what those organisations are there for. So thinking about who you need help from to take those steps. Do you need to get school on board with this plan? Do you need to talk to your NASC about getting support? Who are the other organisations in your circle who are there to help with those disability related things? Who are your friends and your family? Who are your networks who can help you achieve these things? Who, even if their role is to support and encourage you and tell you you're doing a good job, or to listen to you while you complain about how it all fell apart. It's really, really normal to want help to go through their journey. And for me, certainly personally, it helps me a huge amount with accountability if I've told other people the stuff that I'm working on. But also when those long-term plans are complex, you might need people who you don't have in your world right now. So I talk to a lot of parents who go, there's no one I feel safe leaving my child with. Well, actually, to achieve that 10-year plan, you probably need to invite some new people into that circle. And so we need to start that soon so that you can take those really gradual steps towards things, so that you don't have to go out and meet somebody and say, hey, I'm going to need you to be my new best friend and I'm going to need you to do all these things for me. We want to build up to that kind of stuff. So some key things to consider, I guess, is thinking about getting funded supports, so taikura supports or NASC supports. The sooner that you get those in place, the better, because we all know that system is slow. And so if you are thinking about moving out of home, if you go to the NASC and you say, I'm going to move out of home next month and I'm going to need some more disability supports, there's every chance you don't get that support for another 6 months, because you have to wait until it's your turn and then they have to think about it and review something and who knows what. So as soon as you know you might need them, it's the time to have the conversation about getting them put in. Yeah, and then I guess it's also thinking about things like welfare guardianship and power of attorney. So particularly when people have intellectual disabilities, more and more the NASCs are asking to ensure that we know who has decision-making power in a dynamic, and making sure that those things are in place, however they need to be in place, if they need to be in place, to ensure the longevity of whatever that plan is. So if we're 5 years old, we probably just go, cool, don't have to worry about that at the moment. But if you're thinking about those longer term adult decisions, making a conscious choice about whether or not you consider those things is a really valuable thing to do, as well as wills and all that kind of thing. Because lots of people, again, they wait until something's gone wrong before they try and get those systems set up. So I guess some scenarios to think through. We think about leaving home. And for me, there is no right way to leave home. There is no right time to leave home. And sometimes this is people aiming that they're leaving home the day they're leaving school. And for some people, this is only looking at leaving home when living at home with their parents has become unsustainable, many, many years down the line. But for me, what I think is really clear is having that vision. It makes the world of difference if you are saying, I'm going to leave home and I want to work towards this life. This is what I'm leaving home for. to live with people like this, to receive support in this way, to have this kind of independence or whatever it is that is driving that move from home. And sometimes it is just to make my family dynamic sustainable. If I can leave home, then I can stay in relationship with my parents, because then we'll take some of that pressure out of our dynamic in the day-to-day relationship. But if we start from a conversation of what is the thing we are aspiring to create, rather than which of the government contracts is going to give me the support that I need. So I talk to a lot of families who say, my kid's going to have to go to residential care. And they say that because that's the only option that's been presented where they know that their child will get 24/7 support. But they often haven't considered what they want from support. They don't articulate, and some of that's because we've got a scarcity model. There's not enough support out there, so you don't want to aim too high because you can't always get what you need. But actually being able to say, these are the things that are really central to well-being. These are the things that are going to make a difference in the life that I am trying to create for this person, and the life that I know will bring them joy. That helps you change your decision-making from how do I get into a residential service to how do I create a living option that's going to support them to achieve stuff. And yeah, it's really valuable to make sure that you know for certain what is the stuff you don't want to lose, regardless of what support you end up with when you move out of home. I think that it can be really valuable to break out of the disability specific models if you want to. I talk to a lot of people who are going to go flatting, and they assume that they have to flat with another disabled person, and they assume that this is how it's all going to come together. But when you sit down and you ask them why, they don't usually know. Particularly knowing that you don't have to live in a living situation forever. You have to find flatmates and live with those people for the next 40 years. You can find flatmates, you can live with them for a year, and then you can move again. Certainly that's what I did in my 20s. Didn't enjoy it much, but you know, like, it's really important that we don't assume that people move out of home and they go to some place they're going to be forever. And planning for the eventuality that it's not going to last forever is also really important. I talked to a young woman the other day who she's living independently, and her situation's changing and she needs to get a flatmate, I guess. Well, probably in the end a flatmate, but she was saying, I need to get a sleepover staff member. I need to go back and I need to ask the NAT for funding so I can have a sleepover staff member. And when I asked her the questions about why is it a staff member and not a flatmate, it was because on the off chance that she got food poisoning or something like that, got unwell in the middle of the night, she would physically need help to get to the bathroom. And she couldn't, if she didn't have a sleepover staff member, how would she physically get that help in the middle of the night? And my question to her was, why would you want to live with a human who wouldn't help you if you were sick in the middle of the night? Like, from my perspective, I would never want to live with a person who would be like, oh, you're really sick and vomiting in your bed. Cool, I'm going to bed. Have a nice night. I don't want to live with a person like that, regardless of disability. And so are we talking about this happening once a week? Is this a thing that you've actually, is this a part of your disability, a complexity that you have that actually this is a regular occurrence? And she said, no. I said, okay, so when was the last time you actually needed help in the nighttime? And she said it was about 2 years ago. And I said, okay, so you want to have a staff member sleep in your house every night because 2 years ago you needed help in the middle of the night? And so we had this conversation about, well, actually, is there other ways that we could manage that? And could we look for a flatmate who specifically would help you in case of you getting sick? Or could we create other backup solutions so that you could get help really quickly that didn't involve having to have a staff member there with you all the time? But she just assumed, she'd made these assumptions about what people would be willing to give freely in that scenario. And she was really shocked by my idea that if I got sick in the middle of the night, I would expect a flatmate to help me if I was unwell enough to need to call out to them. And I don't think that it just hadn't occurred to him that wasn't a disability related thing, that was just a human supporting humans thing. So same deal when we think about respite. We often get stuck in that disability model. We get stuck in respite looks like these things. I think individualized funding has helped us kind of create more out of the box thinking about what respite could look like, although now our rules have been closed back a little bit. But if respite is really hard for you to achieve now, then now is the time to start taking steps towards respite. And that word respite means different things to different people. But, I talk to a lot of parents who say, I don't feel safe leaving my kid with anybody. I can't leave the room. And that's okay. There's so many factors that have led to that scenario. But when we go 10 years from now, I know that you want something different over there. I know that there's a plan that you've got to have in place for you to be able to have a break and for you to be able to have a sustainable living situation. And so even if this year we're taking this much step, even if this year we're getting somebody else to be there to support your child in the room with you, and then we're taking another step and another step and another step, we need to start that stuff now. We need to not wait until it's too late to do that stuff. Well, it's never too late to do that stuff. You can start that stuff when you're 50 if you've got to. But those tiny little steps really do add up when you've got enough time. So the other, I guess for me, it is thinking outside the disability system of what other ways are there to find support that might fit in with your household. And when we think about that from like I say, from the disability lens, it looks like getting a support worker to do these tasks, or going out of home respite. And those are kind of the main ways that the system considers respite. But it is about thinking about what is the right fit for your situation, for your household, for your culture, for your philosophy and way of living, and how do we set things up that are going to sustainably work for everyone in the household to get a break, for everyone in the household to be able to do things that recharge them and give them more energy. And one of the options that I know is really hard, but if we're looking again over that long time frame, those opportunities to combine respite with other people. If you can find another family who share those values and philosophies, it does financially make more respite options available if we can combine forces to achieve things. But that stuff you can't force, you can't go out and look for today. We can, but often it is about meeting the right people and making the most of those opportunities. And so I guess it's just having in mind that can be something that opens those doors to more support options. And the other hard conversation that we have with people is what happens when I die? And that's a huge place of anxiety for a lot of parents, certainly that I deal with, is that lots of people don't want to think about it. They don't want to acknowledge that is the reality that's coming that way. And other people are there going, like, I need to know, I need to have a plan, what are we going to do about it? So always planning makes that smooth. And the further out we're talking, the more leeway we've got, the more time frame we've got to get things set up in a way that is actually sustainable in the long term. Considering that legal decision making is really important in advance, like I say, things like wills and kind of financial management and that kind of stuff is really important. But it's also about, lots of people, quite a lot of people say, so pleased I had 2 children, because then the child without the disability is going to take on that responsibility. But there's also a lot of fear and weight that comes with knowing that we're giving that responsibility to that other child. And so for me, that is about thinking about who is in your support network. How do we ensure that we are planning for that future and we are inviting people in? Because we don't do that naturally. Well, we do, some people do. And so I guess a story from my scenario is that I used to support a man when I was a support worker paying my way through university. And he and I have stayed friends for the last 20 years. And he came over end of last year. He came over end of last year to give me a birthday present. And so I met him and his mum on their way to go walk the dog, and they came over to give me this present. And so while I saw the 2 of them, because I don't usually see his mum, I stopped them and I said, I just wanted to tell you that when you are thinking about your future, when you are thinking about what life looks like for this man when mum's not here, that I'm really happy to be a part of that solution. I don't know what that solution is, but that's where I want to be a part of whatever that network and support that he has in his future. And I knew to say that to them because I know that that is a question and a worry that people have. But lots of people like me who would be happy to help, who would be very willing to be a support, won't know that they need to have that conversation with you, which unfortunately means that you need to have that conversation with them. It means that you do need to find a way to build that circle of support and make sure that there are multiple people there who are going to keep an eye out in whatever capacity that needs to be that resource and that backup in whatever capacity that needs to be. And it's a hard conversation to have. It's a hard reality to look into. What do we plan for in that future? But it is a really important thing to not shy away from. Because again, the sooner we start planning for that future, the less likely we are to get blindsided. And I've certainly seen a lot of people who, when I've worked in big residential organisations, who people have ended up in residential care because something's gone wrong and they've been living at home with their parents until suddenly they couldn't. And those people have been picked up and put in the only residential bed that was available in the city, and that is where they stay. Because we didn't plan for that future and we didn't have a wraparound. And so that is what the NAS can do. That is the only thing they know how to do when we haven't given them any other people to call upon, when we haven't got that backup and that network, when it's not clear who's helping make decisions, then it can be really, really hard to consider that, or to find another pathway and a more suited pathway. Because when we're acting in urgency, we take the path of least resistance. So it's a bit of a depressing one, but it is a really important thing to be considering if that's a scenario that worries you. Okay, so then where do you go for support? And to be honest, there's not amazing solutions. So every time you do your proper needs assessment, they will talk to you about your goals, and that can be a really valuable time to flag to the NAS what you think that future looks like. That can be a really valuable time to start to talk to them about what it is that you're going to need. You can spend your individualized funding on planning and goal setting. So that's some of the stuff that we do at Flying Kites, is that we work with people to make those plans, to think through what that vision is and how do we bring it to reality. I saw Tony was on here before I turned off my access to everybody. Same work that he does. So there are a few organisations out there, not as many as I'd like there to be, but there are a few people out there who can help you to work through that goal planning stuff. But also every disability organisation that you engage with pretty much is going to have a goal planning element to the work that they do. And so if you are doing goal planning with them, be that with your supported independent living or your individualised funding host or whoever it is, you can utilise their skill and their knowledge to help you do that planning. So if you are in same schools using that IEP process, so if you are already having goal planning conversations with people, then just bring the whole thing to the table. Use the skill that they've got, use the people who are facilitating that conversation and their knowledge and ideas, and make the most of that opportunity. Or just like I say, like we did in my family, just call those regular meetings and sit down at the table and work it through. And it can take however long it takes for you. The most important part of this needs to be that you work on the time frame that is right for your family. That you plan for the future that is right for your situation, because we can't tell you that the time is now, and we can't tell you that today is the day you've got energy to take some of those big bold steps, because today might not be the day, and today might be the day that you go, yep, I'm going to do that, put it in my diary for August, because in the end it doesn't work if it doesn't resonate with you. It doesn't work if it's not truly, kind of the time you've got energy to do the work for it. But I really do believe that if you can find the energy to set that vision, then even if it is just in the small ways that you can manage today, just in who you choose to invite in to do some of that support, or how you go about shaping that particular piece of your world, even if it is only these teeny tiny bits that you can actually have the energy to do today, sometimes even just knowing that that is the future, and knowing that, yes, when I think about 10 years from now, these things are going to be a central part of what I'm creating. That's what we want to see. So we want to make sure that hopefully you find some inspiration from that vision. Hopefully you find some energy to bring that stuff to life. So that's the end of me talking. Yeah, it's a big topic, and it's a hard thing to do alone. But what I've been saying throughout all of these presentations is talk to other people. There are other people who are using the same services as you. There are other people who are in your community who are walking the same journey and struggling with the same bits. And so I really do encourage you to ask people what's going on for them and to learn from the lessons of those people, or use those disability information services, use those Facebook groups that exist, and connect and find out what other people are doing that works, so that you know that you're not the only one struggling with whatever that piece is that's hard at the moment.